Dr. Ashley Peterson, Senior Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at the National Chicken Council. Thank you so much and welcome to Ion Politics.
Good morning, and thanks, Jack.
So, your organization represents the broiler industry, which produces chickens for meat. And your organization recently came up with an idea that you believe would alleviate this major egg shortage that we're seeing because of the avian flu. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so in the broiler chicken industry, for the last several years, in fact, since 2009, we have had to discard our eggs that we are not using and actually throw them away as opposed to sending them to the breaking market where they are made into egg products, which subsequently become either mayonnaise or pasta or cake mix. So before 2009, we were selling almost 400 million eggs a year into the breaking market. But after the Food and Drug Administration finalized a rule, we were not allowed to do that any longer. And so we've actually asked FDA to change its rule several times to allow us to move this very valuable protein into the food stream as opposed to throwing it away. And so we thought now with everything that's going on with avian influenza that it would be a good time for us to ask FDA to do it again and see if maybe we can get a little relief and that these eggs could then enter the breaking market and perhaps help with the continued increase in egg prices.
So, just to make sure I heard you correctly, so you're saying that about 400 million eggs, is that on a yearly basis, or basically just thrown away that are perfectly good?
Absolutely.
Wow. And so, and again, why? Well, first of all, why was this rule enacted back in 2009 to require these producers to actually just throw these eggs away? What was
So
the
the rule
basis?
Right. So the rule actually was proposed in 2004, and that was in regards to a few Salmonella enteritidis outbreaks that had happened in the egg industry or associated with shell eggs. So that was the whole reason that this proposal actually came to be. Once the proposal actually was finalized, it included the broiler eggs in that final rule, which essentially said now we had to refrigerate our eggs. And if you know about trying to hatch eggs, you don't refrigerate those eggs. You want to make them warm. And so we don't, since we don't refrigerate our eggs, we were subsequently forced to throw them away.
So, with your idea, what would have to happen to basically make your idea a reality? How would it work, essentially?
So FDA could very quickly grant regulatory discretion, which means that FDA would essentially say, okay, you no longer have to comply with this particular part of this rule. And as soon as that happens, and again, that can happen very quickly, then our eggs would be eligible to go into the breaking market. And just for complete transparency, all of the eggs that we produce would go through the pasteurization step. So essentially, all of our eggs would be cooked before they go into the food supply.
And so you're suggesting that they go into basically go to the supermarkets for people to buy.
They would go to the supermarkets as egg products. They wouldn't be the dozen eggs that you see on the shelf, but they're egg products that would be used in making mayonnaise or ice cream or cake mix or things like that.
So those other uses.
Absolutely.
And what impact could that have then on the rest of the industry and what people at the supermarkets would see?
Right. Well, ultimately, it could help impact the price of eggs to an extent because the eggs that are currently going into the breaking market could potentially go to the store shelves. So the egg industry could free those eggs up. The other thing that could happen is potentially offset some of the potential importation of eggs from other countries, since we have viable protein and eggs right here in the US to use.
And so how quickly, let's say that does happen, because you said the FDA could make this decision very quickly. So how soon do you think there would be an impact where customers would start seeing egg prices drop?
I think it would be relatively soon. I can't say it's going to be days, but it could very well be weeks. And again, to say this is going to be a silver bullet solution, it's not. I wish I had that solution, but it definitely could make some impact.
I mean, 400 million eggs a year is a lot of eggs.
That's a lot of eggs.
And so, I mean, how much of a deficit? I heard one egg producer told Secretary Brooke Rollins at the USDA in East Texas the other day that there are about 50 million eggs. There's a 50 million bird deficit. So that's got to translate to a lot of eggs.
That does. A hen lays about an egg a day. So
And so let me ask you, is this the first time your organization has suggested this change in the rules?
no, we've asked for this several times, and several times it has been denied.
Why?
So prior to, we had a few initial requests prior to having a risk assessment that was done by the Food Safety and Inspection Service and the FDA. So that joint risk assessment came out in 2020, which really substantiated the uh, the minimal risk of taking our eggs and putting them into the breaking market. And so prior to that risk assessment, that data to support the safety did not necessarily exist. But after that, now we have the data to support it, and the data is on our side. And so we made that very much, we talked about that at length in our proposal and said, hey, the data tells us that we're safe, so let's move forward.
So when was the last time you brought this up? Before this time?
We brought it up a couple of years ago when we were in the middle of COVID, and we know what that did to various products on grocery store shelves.
And why was it rejected then, given that you had the data?
Yeah, because I think they misinterpreted the data. And so we just made a play for it again and highlighted why we think this is the right move today.
And so what has the reaction been since you've proposed this? And has your organization reached out to the USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins and her team about this?
Yes, she and her team are aware of it. FDA has been obviously made aware of it several times because it's a petition to them. The White House is also aware of it. So we are telling anybody and everybody who wants to listen to our story that, hey, we'd like to help, and we are here offering a potential solution.
And how soon do you expect to hear?
That's a great question. I would love to get a phone call this afternoon. And the sooner the better, but sometimes the pace of government is not always as fast as we'd like it to be.
And well, if you get an update, please let us know. And then
Absolutely.
my last question to you is, what is your reaction to the USDA's $1 billion plan to, fight avian flu and at the same time try to lower egg prices?
Yeah, I think it's a great effort, and I think it will be resources well allocated. I like the very measured approach that the USDA is taking, focusing on biosecurity, focusing on our need to get more data, to understand kind of what this virus has been doing. So I think it's a great move, and we look forward to partnering with USDA on their initiative.
I did have one other question based on what you said, and that is based on when we hear the term biosecurity, what are we talking about?
So biosecurity is essentially making sure that you minimize any potential risk to your birds. So we want to make sure that we are not bringing the virus from the outside in the environment into the houses where the birds live. And so it's a matter of making sure you have the appropriate clothing on or the appropriate shoes on and different things, again, just to make sure to minimize that risk of bringing the virus from the environment on the outside to the environment on the inside of those chicken houses.
Dr. Ashley Peterson, Senior Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at the National Chicken Council. Thank you so much. We appreciate your insight.
Thanks, Jack.